好，所以那我们就开始。
哦，
Okay, so hello. So we're going to have a short interview about the how the COVID-19 have an impact on the Chinese citizens' social life. So this is our interviewers. Can you please briefly introduce yourself?
yeah. My name is Jiang Muyan. I'm from mainland of China. Yeah, and now I'm studying in Poland international relations as a bachelor degree student.
Okay, so our topic discussing today is about your social life during the pandemic of COVID-19,
Okay.
specifically between from 2020 to the end of around like 2022. So at first, I want to like know you what was this your life before they how to say it before the pandemic. So where were you when the pandemic broke out, and how was your life back then?
Okay. Before the pandemic, I think everything life goes very smoothly and the economic goes strong. But when the pandemic broke out, I was at home during all my winter vacation as a middle school student, and my life was quite normal at that time. And I mainly focused on the school homework, spent time on my phone, and occasionally chatted or met with my friend. And that was nothing unusual before the news about the virus started to spread.
Do you remember any like specific moment that you have like realized that this pandemic is actually very serious and might change your life forever? Like,
Yes,
for
and
example,
I
like maybe like the announcements of the lockdown, or maybe some news from the internet.
okay. I clearly remember when the outbreak of COVID-19 in Wuhan was reported and the city suddenly went into lockdown. And that moment made me realize that this was not only a short-term event. I began to feel that the school might not reopen soon and that daily life would be very different.
Do you have like discussed with your friends or family when the news comes out?
Yeah, I think that's very often. Like my family and I talked about the pandemics almost every day. Especially we are all locked in the room, and especially about the number of cases and the new policies. And my parents trusted the official news sources, and I was influenced by them and by the government. However, I also used social media, so where I saw different opinions. Sometimes I felt confused because the information was not always consistent, but overall, I still relied more on official informations. Yeah,
Okay, so we have been talking about the background, like what happened before the pandemic. So now we shift the story to when what was like during the happened during the pandemic. So can you describe that? How was the life at the strictest time of lockouts? Like what did you saw and what did you hear every day? Maybe like people have been taken away because they have been affected to the COVID-19 virus, have been bring away from the house to have a quarantine by the maybe the medical crews, and how it feels when you have like recall that moment of your life.
yeah. Back then, I was a middle school student, so during that time, that was a very strict lockdown. So uh, for the main time, I stayed at home almost all the time, and my daily life became repetitive, like attending online classes, doing homework, eating, using my phone. I rarely went outside. But concerning about the situation you mentioned, like some people was like arrested. Yeah, I've seen the situations at that time. Like they didn't satisfy the policies our government offered, and they don't have qualified healthy conditions. So they get locked down in the hospitals. And what I remember most in the silence is the silence and the tension in daily life, especially when going for COVID testing, and everyone was wearing masks, and there was a very little communication. So looking back, I feel that period was quite stressful and emotionally heavy, I think.
So I've heard you talk about like the silence and attention during the waiting of the test. Does that experience have like make you like maybe have some mentally collapse or like very maybe like feeling very helpless to the society?
Uh, I wouldn't say I had a complete mental breakdown, but I did feel helpless at that time. Like, for example, when lockdown continued for a long time and there was no clear, and I feel a loss of control over my own life. And this experience made me start thinking more about the balance between safety and personal freedom. Before that, I did not really question these things. Yeah.
So as you say, the balance between it and does the experience have changed your perspective on the social security toward the government, like how they deal with this kind of crisis?
How the government deal with the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
questions?
yeah. Do you have like maybe you have like agree with them or maybe you disagree with them? But overall, did you have like question why the government done those like public policy to
Mm,
deal with the crisis?
okay, so from my point of view, regular testing became a part of our daily life, and we had to do tests frequently and check healthy codes before going outside, going anywhere. So this made me life less convenient and more controlled. And on the mental aspect, it creates a constant sense of pressure, even when there were no cases around. It felt like you always had to be prepared for sudden changes.
Okay, give me a sec. Okay, so as we know in the news, there's a mobile cabin hospital known as the 方舱医院 during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, do you have like any maybe yourself experience or maybe like from your friends or from your family that during you have like been isolated in the mobile cabin hospital?
Mobile cabin hospital. Yeah, but back then I was not in the center of the pandemic, so I was in another city, but not far from Wuhan. So I didn't visit Fangtang Yiyuan, but there are still many mobile hospitals around my city. Like my many of my friends, they had that kind of experience, like be caught into that hospital because they don't uh, qualify for the health conditions. Yeah.
So, how was do you have like maybe chat with them about the experience?
Yes, they feel quite depressed, I think, because they have nothing to do and they have to stay there until their test result qualified the the standard that our government offered. So I think it's not a. I mean, after the pandemic, many of my friends they don't like to mention that period of experience again. Yeah.
I see. So as you say, like it's not really having a privacy between the individual and like in individual handles, like between the individual and the worker, the medical worker there.
Mhm.
They
Yeah,
not really have a lot of like privacy, right?
privacy.
Yeah, privacy during
Yeah,
the lockdown inside the hospital.
actually, we to be honest, we barely have privacy. I think.
Oh, okay, sure. So under that situation, and how was the relationship between like the worker and the patient? But I think you say that they didn't really want to talk about it, right? So maybe you don't
Yeah,
have the answer of it. So okay, let's move on. So I want to talk back to the when the COVID-19 becomes like the COVID-19 tests have become like regularly for your life. You have to, how long have you been need to like do for the regular, like 2 weeks or 1 month, once a month, the test for the COVID?
that's for COVID. I think the most frequent time we have to take a nucleic acid test every day, I think.
Every day.
Yeah, like unless no, I mean uh no matter where you at, like even we are in school and we have test every day, or even when the school get locked down and we go back home and take online classes, and we still need to take the nuclear uh, acid test every day and like around our blocks.
So how this kind of like policy, like the government had developed this policy for you guys to keep tracking the test, right? The COVID test. So how like it affects your lifestyle or like your mental health? Maybe like when you are very feeling anxiety when you have in the test.
Feel anxiety. Yeah, for the first time, I think, yeah, I was anxious, but because it's a very frequent activity, so I don't think I keep that anxiety very often. I think I take it as a part of my daily life, I think.
Oh, I see. So let me moving on to the school life. Like this will be more focusing on yourself. So
Okay.
as you say, during the COVID, you're middle school and going to the high school, right?
Yeah.
And how was the? I know that you have been the whole like the first and second year of your high school was in a pandemic. So how was the isolation management? The isolation management during the time have been made like the lockdown have been affects your social life that time because as you say like the first year you barely know like a lot of people maybe you got into a new school, right? You
Yeah.
have been like been barely meeting people, but like you guys have been like first time meeting are like online instead of like meeting in person.
True, yeah.
So did this like really affect like your social life?
Uh, yeah, I think for sure because isolation reduced my face-to-face interaction with my classmates. I lost many opportunities to communicate naturally in the school, and such as like chatting after class or spend times together. So we could still, but we could still message each other online, but it did not fully replace real life interactions.
Okay. So did you think that you have been lost in your happily school life because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I would say, yeah, I lost so many things.
And so do you have like online courses during the pandemic?
Yeah, for what I remember, like I have five times like our school lockdown during the high school 3 years, and yeah, we have a very high frequency to take online classes.
So did like this kind of learning, like you need to changing from learning in class and turning to online, did this have affecting your maybe your studying or your efficiency in studying?
Yeah, it really made my study harder to stay focused. Like without the classroom environment, like uh, I was more easily to get distracted and my learning efficiency gets much more decreased. And at the same time, my understanding of social connections get changed, and I became like more used to online communications, but I also realized that my physical presence is still very important for the real connection. Yeah.
I see. So, uh, how was like the mood, the motion, the emotion between you and your peers during that time? Like if it was very like often or very like thinking very helpless, or like
Mm.
very anger toward the government's policies, like maybe like the lockdown. Maybe you guys didn't have realized how serious the pandemic is, but you just feel like why you don't let us to go into school, you locking us inside the house.
Yeah.
Do how like the mood have been between you and your peers that time during that time?
For me, I think my mood towards the whole pandemic is very uh, pessimistic and a bit angry towards the government because we have so long time lockdown. But the mood among my colleagues are very mixed, and some students were obedient and follow all the rules without complaint, but others feel helpless and slightly frustrated. Uh, However, most students choose to accept the situation rather than express strong resistance.
Accept the situation. So let me talk about maybe because like we have been talking about like some people have been accept, as you say, some people have very most of the people have been accept what the government decide to do. So I want to talk about like how the citizens in China actually think about the policies that time. So like the first one I want to ask is did like the opinion of the decision of did your opinion on the decision of the government change from maybe like during 2020 there have been like controlling
Mhm.
from the like responsive speed controlling and into like the dynamic zeroing in the end of 2022? Do you like
Yeah,
your opinion have been changing? Like
mm,
maybe what are the government actually doing? Is they really doing this for us or just trying to keep the number low for the
mhm.
for the better looks?
Yeah, our perspective towards the government is keep changing at that time. Like in 2020, for me, I generally supported the government's response because uh, it's really effective. Like the pandemic broke out uh, at the beginning of 2020, but it get controlled uh, within half a year. So at that time, I supported. Uh, However, in later stages, especially during the strict control, like the events happening in Urumqi or in Shanghai, especially during the strict control, and I began to feel that the restrictions are too strong and affect daily life significantly, and my perspective became more complex. Like not purely support them. I became more like uh, tend to criticize their policies.
So as you mentioned the Urumqi incidents, so can you like
Yeah,
briefly into for me for the what actually happened during that time?
yeah, I can. Uh, Actually, the Urumqi fire had a strong emotional impact on not only on me, like on the whole social layer. And after seeing discussions online, and I started to think more critically about the whether certain policies might have unintended consequences, it made me more aware of the real life effects behind the distracting policies, I think.
So you're saying that maybe the government is just doing it for the looks, but not really, how to say it, like not really for the actual situation. They not really like understand what, because I know that China is very, very big, so the government not actually can be like very focusing on each part of the states.
Yeah.
So maybe like if the central having one policies, but they need to adapt in different what's that called, the Sheng province, right?
Province, yeah, like I think our government put so much attention towards the outcomes, like uh, they really want to achieve to eliminate the pandemics as soon as they can in China, like in mainland. So sometimes the policies is it's
Very
kind of
strict.
too
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 strict.
strict and too cruel, I think. Yeah.
So I want to ask about the white paper movement at that time. So how do you feel about the movement have been like impact the political views in your generations?
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't participate in white paper movement, but I followed the information line. So it made me realize that people, especially young people, they are very active in that movement. They were beginning to express their opinions more openly. Like it has certain influence on my thinking, like especially in terms of understanding political expressions and public opinions. Yeah.
So during this 3 years of pandemic, is there like any conflict between you and your parents or maybe your friends on the perspective of the prevention policies?
Uh, yes, actually, sometimes and my parents tended to support the stricter measures because they're more um, preservative. I think, like they support the government very much, while I sometimes feel they were too restrictive. So, however, these disagreements were not very intense, but we still have, and we usually discuss them and try to understand each other's perspective.
Okay, I see. So how do you really like deal with this kind of conflicts? You have been like maybe talk with your parents and discuss
Yeah.
how like you think.
Mm. You mean how the experience affect my identity, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh, Let me think. This experience really made my identity more complex. Yeah, like on one hand, uh, I recognize the effectiveness of collective actions. Like we did have strong achievements, like the Fangzheng Hospital. But on the other side, I started to think more about the individual rights and personal space. Yeah.
Okay, so let me have start to have the conclusion for this discussions. How so for you? How was the experience change after maybe like your identity recognitions? Yeah, as a maybe like as a Chinese students or Chinese citizens, did your this kind of like experience during the pandemic have been affecting your own identity?
Mm, you know, like when I really experiencing the pandemic, I was still I wasn't an adult, so at that time I didn't think too much about the responsibilities I need to take as a social individual. But like in these years, I uh, gradually entered the society, so I think more at the perspective of and on the government side, on the social side, like yeah, I think that that's a difference. I think yeah, and I don't know how to explain. Yeah,
Okay, I see.
yeah,
So is there like any post-pandemic effects, maybe like mentally or lifestyle, have been changing on you through the life have been like, although the pandemic is mostly over and everything is back to normal, but if is there anything that have been effect cannot be changing back after a pandemic?
yeah. It really has effects on me. Like I'm more sensitive to public healthy issues, and sometimes feel more anxious about the uncertainty. So some habits like being cautious in public spaces still remain.
Okay, so at last I want to ask if there is a word or a sentence like can conclude your whole feelings on after the
Yeah.
pandemic. Like what will it be?
I would say it was a period of restriction, but there are so many external factors forced me to grow.
You to grow. I quite agree with that. So this will be our interview. Thank you for let us having this interview. So yeah, that would be it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay，嗯，
好，结束了。
专业，
可以可以，nice。
真专业，真专业，专业研讨。